My name is Vidya Math and I'm an author. And today I wanted to take you on a tour. And the tour is of my books. So I'm going to take you through right from the very start. And the very start was with this book here. It's called The Luminosity of Crystals. And I'm going to give you some background as well. So the Luminosity of Crystals actually originally had a German name, but the book is written in English. So when it came to publishing the book, I changed the name of the book into English. So it had the same title in German, but it's now got the English title. So this is about a girl who's been at work and is kind of disillusioned with life and, is going to work and really not having any time to do anything that she has ever dreamt about doing. And she's also in a difficult relationship with someone who really isn't very nice to her, and she's quite young. So she's at that stage where, she's in this relationship, she loves this man, but hasn't really had the time and space or even the contributions, I guess, from anywhere else, influences to guide her about this situation. And she goes away on a very short trip. And on this short trip, some really magical things happen. So it doesn't fall within the realms of fantasy, but it falls within the realms of magical realism, where things can come into life just to show people what they need to know at any given point in time. So she kind of goes on this adventure, and the adventure also involves a romantic connection from the past. So it's a book that when you read it, at the end of it, it's a book about self-worth, and it's a book where at the end of it you kind of think, yeah, it doesn't really matter how the world might see us as individuals, or how the world might treat us as individuals. So that might be anything in the world, the situations people are in, the people they're surrounded by, but that we have a core that shines through and is there. So this is a book about that, and tagged on to that story is another story, and that second story is called Dimensions of the Heart. Now, Dimensions of the Heart, I will come to in a little minute, is actually the first story in another series, and that series is very exciting, is romantasy. So there are elements of fantasy there, and a lot of comedy, and when you actually go on those journeys with the characters, you're really taken to some amazing places that are not on this earth, and they are so fun to be in. So that's the second story, Dimensions of the Heart. Now, from there, so both of the stories here are actually the first stories in two different series, but I'm going to jump to the next book that was written. So after The Luminosity of Crystals, the next book that was actually written is called The Book of Stamps. Now, The Book of Stamps is exceedingly close to my heart. It is not a book that I ever planned to write. I started to write it as a short story to give to my little sister for her birthday as a birthday present. And the book absolutely did not want to end at the end of this short story. It just wanted to keep going, and a character appeared, and I didn't know who this character was, and I actually didn't even know what the story of the book wanted to be, but the book kind of taught me itself what the story of the book would be, and it would really download into my mind. And it took a lot longer to write than the short story I was planning. So it was 5 months late as a birthday present, which is quite shocking, really. But to be honest, it was so worth writing it. Now, when you read this story, it is the type of story, it is set in a kind of past, not on Earth. It's not wholly a way out fantasy, but there are elements of fantasy, and there's a lot of magic in this book. And There are a lot of things that make you stop and think about the way different parts of our lives link up. And not only within our lives that we're living at the moment, but how our lives link to the past and how beings come into our lives and how they touch us, but also how they might have been part of our story from a long time ago. So, this is, like I say, a book that's exceedingly close to my heart. I remember when I finished writing it, I didn't expect to finish writing it the day that it just stopped. And I burst into tears. And I think at that point I felt, I don't even know if I could face writing another book because the emotional investment, the time investment, and then not really knowing what I was going to feel at the end, and experiencing that really for the first time. It was quite a lot to experience. So it took me a long time before I actually worked up the courage to write the sequel. And the sequel is called The Book of Gems. So this book, as you can see, is a big book, and it took me 2.5 years to write this book. Um, when I started writing it, I was revisiting characters that had been in the Book of Stamps, and so this is a direct sequel to the Book of Stamps. And right from the outset, right from the start of this book, and I think what I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to read to you just the start of the book. The chapter is called Trinkets and Gems. Thinking of Harry was like reaching into the deep recesses of her being and perturbing her soul. Such were the array of emotions stirred by thoughts of him. She knew he was real, even though there was nothing to suggest that this was the case. So, to be honest, even when I read that, I get goosebumps because it's the start of an epic story. And the journey that this book actually takes you on is an unforgettable one. And you revisit things that you might have visited in the Book of Stamps that you never thought that you might go to again. But when you get there, you're just like, wow, am I really here again? Am I really experiencing it again? And it being the sequel, it gives you a lot more information and takes you on a lot more journeys and a lot more excitement and so much feeling. You really feel for the characters, and it's one of those books that you cannot really put down once you start it. So when you look at them here, Book of Stamps and the Book of Gems, really, when you read them, you should read this one and go directly into reading that one. So now I'm going to take you to, I mentioned that the very first story, Luminosity of Crystals, was the first story in a series. And the second story in the series, the Luminosity series, is the Luminosity of Energy. So you can see the cover there. Now, the difference between the Luminosity series and the Book of series is that these are very realistic books, and they're books about women's lives, women who are currently living their lives and experiencing the challenges and the different things that they come across. So one of these books was written a little while ago, and then the second book was written fairly recently. So it's watching a woman's life as she goes through things. So it's relationships, so they could be relationships with men, they could be the relationships that she has with work, the challenges that she has with balancing being a woman who has to work and support herself. And then the enchantment of things like romance, but also the reality of romance and the reality of what life can bring. So even in the most difficult times, the little glimmers of incredible insight and incredible magic that can just infiltrate. So at this point, I want to tell you a little story. It's actually not written in any of my books, and maybe one day it will be, but it is about something very enchanting and that happened that was very synchronistic, and it's something that I think back to when I'm in times when I'm in trouble. So like when I'm in trouble emotionally, or I'm wondering where's the next paycheck going to come from, and things like that. So I remember one time I was unemployed and I'd been looking for work, and work was really hard to come by. And I have to say, I don't think that has changed. I think, if anything, the job market is even possibly harder now, but I think it maybe always was, certainly in my lifetime. And that's not down to people or their willingness to work. I think it can just be very hard. Like if you have 800 applicants for a job, only one person is going to get that job. So I was unemployed at the time, had been looking for work, and I woke up one morning and I did not have any money to buy any food. So I woke up and I was looking at the ceiling and I thought to myself, gosh, if I had some money, I could have bought packet of rice, a packet of lentils, and a little bottle of oil. And with those things, because I had some spices in the flat share that I lived in, with those things, I could have actually cooked a meal for myself. But I did not have um, any money that day. So I couldn't, I wasn't going to be able to cook this meal. And I got a phone call, so I was still lying in bed looking at the ceiling, I guess, kind of wondering, what do I do now? Like, obviously, I was going to be doing job applications probably. And the phone rang, and somebody rang to ask me, like, are you free, Vidya, to do a dance workshop? So we can't pay you, but, there's this group and they would like a dance workshop. Can I come and pick you up? So this lady called me and asked me that, and I thought, well, that sounds like a good idea because I'm a dancer and I'm a dance teacher and I'm a performer, and there's a group who would like to have a dance workshop. So I said, yes, of course, I would love to come and do it. So the lady came and she picked me up, and she said to me when she arrived, I have brought some things for you from the temple. So it's some food. And I thought what she meant by that was that it was some cooked food, that somebody had cooked it. Often you get this in temples, that you would get a little offering of cooked food. And I thought perhaps she had brought that and that there would be like a little lunchbox type of thing. And I thought, oh, how sweet. And so she said, I will give it to you at the end of, like, after we finish what we're doing. To be honest, we were at this place for most of the day. And the workshop went amazingly. The dancing was amazing. Everyone did so well and everyone had so much fun. And bearing in mind that this whole business had started in the morning, by the time this lovely lady drove me back to my house, the sun had set. So really we were out for the whole day. And I think while I was there were probably things like drinks, like some fizzy soft drinks and things. So I'd probably had some of that while I was there. And then the lady said to me as she was dropping me off, she said, I need to get the boot of my car really close to your door. And I thought, I wonder why. So she parked her car such that it would be as close to the door of where I lived as possible. And she opened the boot and she pulled out, and this will make me emotional. So she pulled out a bag of rice that was this size, and a bag of lentils that was this size, and a tankard of cooking oil. And she'd had to get the boot of her car really close to my door because of how heavy these things were. And she very kindly, I was so taken aback that I couldn't really even help her, but she very kindly took them out of the boot of the car and she put them on my doorstep and she said, "Thank you so much for your help today." And she got in the car, gave me a hug, got in the car, and she drove off and waved bye. And I was, by this time, the moon was out and the stars were out. And I was looking at the rice and the lentils and the tankard of cooking oil. And then I would look up at the moon and the stars, and then I would look at these foods that were on the doorstep again. And I did this for such a long time that my lovely flatmate, who is also my landlady, opened the door because she'd seen me doing this, and she kind of said, are you planning on coming in?" And she helped me take these things into the house. And sometimes I would cook things and my lovely flatmate would also have some of that food, and I would have friends come round, and quite often I would cook. And this food lasted for such a long time. It lasted for long after I found a job. And I remember even when I lived in a new place, I still had that bag of lentils. And it was a very curious thing because, as I mentioned earlier in the story, when I had woken up that morning, I had thought if I had some rice, some lentils, and some cooking oil, I could have made a little meal for myself. But in the end, what I was somehow given was enough for, meals to last me almost half a year. So these books are about the reality of life and the challenges of life, but they are also about these types of situations that come into our lives to help us at times when, say, maybe we don't have food to eat. So I think if you read these, you would probably relate to them, and also that your heart would step back and take you to times in your life when maybe you were facing challenges, and actually when you're reading the books you might also be facing challenges. And my hope is that those books at times like that will help people and help with just that tiny glimmer we need sometimes when things get really hard, to just think, well, really unexpected things can happen and amazing things can just come into the picture when we're not expecting it. So the second story in this book, Dimensions of the Heart, that is the first story in another series. So that's a fantasy series or romantasy series. And the second book in that series is called The Ring. And my eyes light up when I am showing you this book. So if you look at the picture on this book, you can see that there is a girl. This is a fantasy book, so we are not talking necessarily about human beings, but we're talking about beings who are a bit human-like. So you can see this girl, you can see a ring, you can also see another figure. And this book was very unexpected. I started writing this book kind of out of the blue, and it came from an experience that I was having. And I'm going to read you the first part of this book now. So the first chapter is called The Ring. The band glowed on the ring finger of her left hand, a wedding band, clearly, although Aurora had no idea whom she was married to. The etheric band would illuminate periodically, such that Rora could see it as an energetic glow. It would shine in different colours, the transparent stones set into it sparkling with halos around its middle. It felt like a bizarre secret, as no one but Rora seemed to be able to see the band. She had first sensed the presence of the wedding ring in the middle of nights spent alone, for she had no husband yet, nor a partner. As she would lie awake in the dark, she could feel the pressure of the band on her finger, as though it were made of molten metal at times, like it was searing through her flesh. She would attempt to remove the non physical entity with the motion of pulling it off with the fingers of her other hand and flinging it back into the ether. It would, however, rapidly regain its presence each time, encircling her finger snugly every night, the way a man in love would embrace his beloved. So clearly, this young lady is besieged by a wedding ring, and she doesn't know who has put this wedding ring on her finger. She has no information about it. And so when you launch into this story, you can imagine that it really comes with so much excitement, because her initial thought is, how do I get rid of this thing? She's trying to get rid of it. And that takes her on some incredible adventures. Now, this book is slightly unlike many of my books. It's a very racy book, not in a very obvious way, but when you read it, you know, your heart goes flying. And it's a gripping book in a good way, in that you can't put it down once you've started it. And it's full of lots of things that are really fun. They will make you laugh. There's one particular character in there that, you know, is going to grab your heart, and you won't be able to wait until like this character turns up in the different chapters. So that book is called The Ring. And now I come to, I think it is, I'm going to count them, because try and remember how many books I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I'm going to come to book number 6. And this is The Train Station Cafe and Other Stories. This is a short story book. And unlike the other ones, this is not really a fiction book. This is a non-fiction book. And it takes you on all these different journeys. And some of these journeys, they really make you feel things in your heart. Some of these journeys, they make you laugh. And it's fast-paced, not in the toxic way that job adverts say the job's going to be fast-paced, which means they're going to work you to death. But this is fast-paced in a way where, you know, it's exciting. So you're jumping from one journey to the next, and you never really know where you're going to land. You never really know which country you're going to land in. You never really know which form of transport you're going to be on, or who you're going to meet there, or who you're going to see there. So it's a delicious book. And I actually would like to read to you one of the stories in this book. You can probably tell from my accent where I'm from. So this is a story that's pertinent to that. And the story is called Nighttime Bus Trip from Country to Country. It is 1994, London, England, approaching 11 p.m. The queue for the express bus to Glasgow, Scotland has formed. On the journey, there will be one stop in the middle of the night at a motorway stop. If the toilets are on the other side of the motorway via an overhead bridge, beware. Passengers need to be back in time before the bus leaves again. If snoring bothers you, it might be a problem. The passengers are generally oblivious to the outside world throughout the journey when the windows are dark with midnight blue, apart from during the one motorway stop when everyone piles out. The driver stays awake, though, ferrying his sleeping cargo of passengers and their luggage in the hold, from southern England to Scotland for almost 8.5 hours. Sleep well, passengers, some curled up into your seat, some with your head unknowingly on a fellow passenger's shoulder, and some with your arms splaying into the aisle. Wake to a new day and a new chapter. So that is the story about a night bus. So you kind of fall asleep in one country, England, and then wake up in Scotland. It's a journey that I did many times when I was younger, and it felt so adventurous at the time. I think now I'd probably struggle to do a night bus journey, but it was certainly amazing at the time. And now I'm going to come to the final book that I currently have published, but I do have another book on the way very, very soon, which is going to be slightly different to all the rest of the books I've been showing you today. Now, this, which is the latest published book, which was published very recently, is called Poetry Book Time Machine. And although you will find a lot of poetry in my writing, this is the only book that I've released so far which is actually of poetry. So I will read to you. It's called Time Machine. So I'm going to read to you the very first poem in this book. And it's called In the Passing of Time. In the passing of time, we lose ourselves and find new versions of us, or perhaps rediscover older versions we don't even remember existed. I remember playing in the sandpit at nursery when I was little, and one thing's for sure, I'd still love to be playing in sand, but this time on a sunny beach somewhere. So now I have come to the end of my video and the journey that I've taken you through the different books that I have written. So it's been a complete pleasure to share all of that with you. I hope you have enjoyed it and found it meaningful as well as entertaining. And I'm going to wish you an amazing day and lots of love and lots of good things. And I will see you again next time. Take care.